What is up, First Round Fantasy fans? Welcome to the First Round Fantasy Podcast, your home for second round advice. I am your host, Jacob Bartley, and I am joined by the evil twin brothers, Joseph Morsas and Justin Morsas. What is going on, guys?
Yo.
So this is our first Thursday podcast. Technically recording on Thursday. We're going to release it on Friday morning. So that being said, people might be listening to this having updates from the Friday practice reports that we don't have that information yet because they're going to be practicing on the East Coast in the morning and be like 3 hours ahead of us. And there's going to be a lot of updates by the time this comes out. But I think I'm going to release it at 5 a.m. to try to get ahead of that as much as possible. But for us, that's 5 a.m. For East Coast, it's 8 a.m. And anyone in the world can watch this at any time. So that makes sense. But yeah, so we just watched the Titans and Colts game. We're going to talk about that a little bit. And then we'll just go over any injury updates we do have. And then we're just going to do some game previews for the Sunday and Monday games. So let's tackle this Thursday night game real quick. We were all talking about this before the podcast started. And, you know, as a fantasy manager, it was just a very disappointing game. Joe, what's the one thing you take away from this game, man?
Jonathan Taylor, man, retirement party was tonight. Everybody was hoping for a breakout game. I was hoping for a breakout game. I just traded for him a couple of weeks ago. You can't trust it, man. The coach comes out and says, oh, it's all game script, and that's why he's been not getting as many carries the last 2 weeks, but we still trust him. We have confidence in him. And then, look, they're up 17. There's 6 minutes in the game. The guy has 7 carries all night, or six or seven carries, and they put in Wilkins. You know, and when things are going good, Hines is in. So how can you trust it with that three-headed monster? It's good for their team, but not good for us. So for right now, he's got to go on the bench. I think even with these really soft matchups coming up, it's going to be tough.
I agree with you, man. You can't start him because there's been several weeks where cake matchup and he doesn't do anything, and they have specific, like the coach uses them in specific roles. I mean, Hines got the most touches, but Jonathan Taylor's on the third down conversions and the goal lines. But then if he doesn't get the goal line the touchdown the first time, he puts in Hines to try to punch it in the second time. Or not Hines, but Wilkins. He puts in Wilkins. And then when they're trying to run out the clock, when they're trying to just run the clock down, they don't put Taylor in, they put Wilkins in.
Yeah.
So it's, for fantasy managers, it's just not an ideal situation. And if I was using him on a competitive fantasy team, I would not be starting him.
Yeah,
anymore.
It's so tough, man, because you're watching the game, right? I'm in the first quarter, and he catches 2 balls for 25 yards, and you're like, whoa, all right, let's go. He had like 4.5 points in the first, 6 minutes, 5 minutes, or whatever, whenever they touched the ball first. And then if you guys saw, he trucked some dude.
I saw that. Mm-hmm.
I was like, damn, hell yeah. Like, all right, Jonathan Taylor is in it to win it. This guy's going to surprise everybody tonight. Coach likes him. Then all of a sudden, next drive, doesn't get in. Next drive, doesn't get in. And you're like, okay. I mean, again, if he can't get more carries showing out pretty good in the first quarter, he did all of his damage pretty much in the first half. And then, like you said, he had 1 goal line carry, which got stuffed. And then Hines comes in and punches it in. You can't trust it at all. So it is what it is. We'll move on. I'm done with him. He's got to prove at least a couple weeks to get back on the lineup.
And you can't roster all 3 of them all season. You can't start 2 of them every week. It's just not worth it. So yeah, I'm done starting him at this point. Justin, what do you take away from this game, man?
I don't know. It just reminds me, just real quick on that, it reminds me of the Drake Edmonds thing. When Drake gets the handoff, it's obvious they're running the ball. When they need some dynamic play that comes together, and it reminds me Hines is explosive. He makes beautiful plays, and it's not looking good for Taylor at all. But yeah, I stay away. I took away the Titans offense kind of. It's very random and sporadic altogether. AJ Brown, I love the man. He had a really bad night, and it's not going to change anything going forward. It's a start for me no matter what. But 4 targets, a couple of drops that could have made it a feasible night. But Tannehill threw a good amount. It wasn't one of those low ends. It was just a really odd game and bad for almost every single Titan all around.
Yeah, I mean, you're not – Derrick Henry has 19 carries and 103 yards. You're not mad at that, but he should have had a bigger game because they should have kept him in the game longer. To me, we were talking about this before we started, that even if they're trying to come back, they should have Derrick Henry in the game because he can get the ball downfield quickly for you. And then you do whatever you can to get the touchdown once you're in the red zone. So I'm not mad at the Henry usage, but I just think he could have a bigger game. But nothing has changed for Derrick Henry. You're still starting him every week, no matter what, no question.
Corey Davis back on the map a little bit. I mean, I know he did most of his work on that last garbage time drive, but he
had a few clutch plays throughout the game.
And he's finally put together a season, man. This is a guy that, Jacob, you personally never gave up on him.
Until this year.
And then the season you do give up, I guess his brother passed away yesterday. So
yeah, I did. They were talking about that during the game.
Yeah, that's awful. I'm sorry to hear that. But, I mean, he's put together, as far as his fantasies, put together a decent season, man. He's had – 3 or 4 or 5 games where he's been fantasy usable, which is a lot more than he's done in the rest of his career.
Yeah, other than, and again, we're always talking full PPR, 10 points or 10 yards per point. Other than last week when he had the donut against Chicago, who's one of the toughest matchups for wide receivers in the league, he had over 11 fantasy points in every game.
Yeah, I definitely like him. If you have him as a bench piece, he's doing really great.
Yeah, and it was hard to start him after last week, though.
There's something about him and guys like Sterling Shepard. Why am I just not excited to start them? I don't know why. Tonight I started Taylor over Shepard. That was what it came down to for me. And it's just guys like that where I'm like, you see they get 15, 17, 16. Cole Beasley's another one. I'm just not excited or willing to start him. I don't know why.
Well, I know what you mean, and I have Corey Davis in one league, and after 2 weeks ago, he had a 26-point game, and I was like, screw it. Brandon Ayuk was out. I was like, I'm going to start him against Chicago and the donut. So unless it's a great matchup, I'm not going to start him, basically. I mean, it just depends on – and we're going to be past bye weeks here soon, so everyone's going to have all their players available. So for me, the most exciting thing in this game is Michael Pittman Jr. He is a guy that I was eyeing on waivers throughout the week, and I picked him up in one league and stashed him on my bench, and I really like what I saw. He had 7 catches for 101 yards, and he had a rush for 20 yards. I don't know if you watched some of his plays, Joe, but he looked great out there.
He did. And we kind of expected it, right, coming into the year, that he was going to have a role. Excuse me. But, he was drafted pretty high, right? If I remember correctly, he was 2nd or 3rd round pick this year. So, there's been a lot of talk on all the other rookie wide receivers this year, He
was injured and I think he was on injured reserve for the 3 weeks.
Yeah. Injured reserve and then kind of playing behind, the Colts again. Even their wide receivers this year, man, have been a lot like their running backs. It's hard to really trust anybody there. Mo Alley Cox starts to show out, and then Trey Burton takes over. Trey Burton takes over, and then Jack Doyle has a big game. And it just sucks because you can't trust any of those 3 guys, but any game, one of them is going to go off. And the same thing has kind of been done with their wide receivers where there's just, I don't know. I've seen Pascal have decent games. There's another kid there. I can't remember his name, but he's had some good games. And T.Y. Hilton seems like he's just 7-8 points every week, which doesn't make him fantasy usable, but also holds back the other guys.
Oh yeah.
So it's a tough situation over there starting really anybody on the Colts as far as fantasy wise, other than maybe their defense, right? That's like the only bright spot for fantasy owners.
Absolutely. And I will say, and I'm not just biased because I picked him up in a league, but Michael Pittman Jr. is the one guy I would want if I'm going to roster anybody, because look, last week, so he comes back from the injury and he doesn't do much, but then second week back, 7 targets, 4 catches, 56 yards. Now this week, 8 targets, 7 catches, 101 yards.
Mm-hmm.
So, and he's big. He's 6'4". He's a big guy, and you can add him to the list of these impressive rookie wide receivers this year. And if you look at his matchups, man, the weeks, so his schedule from weeks 12 through 16 is amazing. Whoever the pass catcher is going to be in the Colts, and I think it's going to be him. He's definitely worth adding on your bench, and if he continues this, he's startable, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, as far as, the Colts, I think what every fantasy manager wants to see is just Pittman and Taylor kind of take the reins.
I know, right?
When you're looking at their schedule, it's like, oh, man, cakewalk, like plus matchup. Let's go, But again, I'd love a situation where Pittman starts to have consistent games. Mo Alley Cox kind of takes over as the guy as far as the tight end position, or Trey Burton, either one.
Yeah.
And then also even Hines, dude. I don't care even if Hines becomes the starter, as long as we have a defined role. Exactly. If I know Hines is going to get 65% of the snaps every week, I'm going to start him. Like, that's kind of reminds me of when Tariq Cohen was really fantasy usable 2 years ago before David Montgomery came in, and he was 15 points every game just based on PPR. And if he got you a touchdown, he could have an even bigger game. And we kind of seen that with Hines in a few games this year where he's been given the green light and he's put up big numbers. So if they were to rely on him as the guy, I mean, we've seen kind of what Phillip Rivers has done with guys like Eckler. And he's almost in that mold where, he's a small dude and he catches the ball, but we saw it on his goal line carry, man. He's got, he's not afraid to have some contact. So I'd love for any of those guys to just settle in as the number one option for the rest of the season. I think that would be great for fantasy managers.
I mean, Hines, other than that Jonathan Taylor knocking down that guy, Hines looked the best out there. Like he's so fast. He was running past guys and they couldn't tackle him. Mm-hmm. So like I said, I'm done investing in this backfield this year, but who knows if other people don't pick up Hines and I see him on waivers next week, just sitting there, might grab him up in a couple leagues. Who knows? Justin, real quick, we were talking about Michael Pittman Jr. How do you feel about this guy? Do you regret not picking him up this week or what?
No. Hearing you guys talk, the only thing I understand is that the Colts are literally a team by committee. They don't have any specific guys. The only guy I'd put trust in to say flex is Nyheim Hines, just so he has like an explosive game. But I want their receivers to do well. Pascal, Hilton don't do much. Pittman should be the guy, but I would pick him up if I have a deep spot, but I'm not excited to start any of them because that team is just a slow, grinded out team.
Yeah. And a question for you guys. So next week, and I think not obviously we're going to talk about this week's games, but next week, the Colts get the Packers. And we've seen the Packers consistently surrender big games to running backs every week in and week out. Even last week against the Niners in an awful week, McKinnon still was very fantasy usable. I think he finished with 15 or 16 points. That is expected to probably be a really good game, I would say. I think they just flexed it to either Sunday night also. So if you're going against the Packers, who I'm looking right now are the second worst against the run in the NFL, are you starting Nyheim Hines with some confidence thinking, hey, he had 12 carries tonight and he had 6 targets. If he replicates that, if I get 18 touches out of Nyheim Hines next week, I'm going to be very happy. So do you risk starting him? I think depending on your alternatives, he's definitely the start over Taylor, right?
Yeah, I personally am not going to, but I think people are going to benefit from that. I think the fantasy world is going to be talking up Naheem Hines after this week. They're going to be saying he's the guy. People are going to pick him up, and
Yeah.
then
Wilkins has a
hey,
game.
maybe maybe he rolls with this momentum through the rest of the year. But I'm not touching it. Is all I'm saying.
I would definitely start Hines over guys like Beasley or Pittman or Corey Davis. You know, those I just rather take the ceiling that he can get.
Yeah. What's funny is Jacob kind of brings up that point where it's like the whole world is talking up Hines, and then all of a sudden their coach just pulls a fast one, and he gets like 8% of the snaps, and he's barely in the game, and Wilkins is out there running. Taylor finally has his blow up game. Yeah, that's why it's such a volatile situation where
I can't mess with it because look at Wilkins 2 weeks ago, week 8. He had 20 carries, 89 yards, a touchdown. It's too unpredictable. Like all three of them are too prominently used for one of them to be relied on consistently. It's not there are situations where there's 3 guys used, but one of them really doesn't have much of a role at all.
Yeah.
And then one of them's a pass catching back, and you can use 2 of those guys. But this situation, I'm not messing with it. So real quick, I'll run through these real quick. We have some players likely to return from injury, and then some other injuries that we're pretty sure we're not going to see these guys. And again, this could change by tomorrow morning, but as of Thursday night, this is some of the information that we have. And again, excuse me if I missed something. It's kind of hard to track all this stuff, but we have Miles Sanders back at practice. We have Austin Hooper back at practice. Kenyon Drake returns to practice. Mark Ingram practiced Wednesday, but apparently he did not practice Thursday. Coach says Darrell Henderson practiced and is likely to play Sunday. Chubb is back at practice Thursday, and he's not wearing a knee brace anymore. Antonio Gibson was banged up with a shoulder injury, but apparently he is good to go. So out of those, do you guys fully expect all of these guys back and good to go, or is there any one of them that you guys are worried about?
I don't think Drake is going to play, to be honest. I know he got limited work, but I just think one more week to keep it safe. It would be quick to run. I mean, it wasn't that serious, but I can see him taking 1 week off, but everyone else seems good to go.
Yeah, I'm wondering about Mark Ingram. Not sure how much fantasy. I guess it changes whether you're going to stream a guy like Dobbins or Edwards. But he's the one, again, older guy. I'm not sure they really need him against the Patriots. Think they might just let Dobbins and Edwards out there and let them get another week to rest up.
Yeah, I mean, selfishly, I'm hoping for both of those situations because in one league I have Drake and Edmonds, and I just want to know. I just want to know which one to start. You know, it's very difficult. We've seen games where they're both in and Edmonds goes off, but mostly everybody started Drake, and then since Drake had that big blow up game, where he had the garbage time, what was it, an 80-yard touchdown or something? He's been injured. So I prefer just clarity in these situations. And like, I'm not starting Dobbins or Edwards if Mark Ingram's back. That's just like the Colts situation.
Yeah.
In a way.
Yeah.
Except like there's been so much expectations put on Jonathan Taylor, though. I don't feel like Dobbins has had those same expectations.
It's because we kind of knew, and I don't want to keep talking about Taylor because he's just depressing me, but Dobbins we knew was going to play behind Ingram for a year. That was kind of the expectation, was that hopefully he emerges as the second guy in front of Edwards. I think he's maybe done enough to do that, but still, like you said, it's a 3-headed monster. You don't really want a piece of any of them if they're all healthy. Where Taylor was the guy and then all of a sudden wasn't after a bye week. So it's very weird that you see a situation like that happen where a rookie gets all the run to start the season, looks good. He had good weeks. He wasn't amazing, but he looked good. And then all of a sudden now you're introducing Wilkins back into the mix. I don't know.
And Wilkins has been there for years, man, and didn't do anything in those past couple years, where he was mixing in with Mac a lot, and some weeks you thought Wilkins was going to take over. I remember, past years where we thought he was going to be something, but he never emerged. Real quick, Nick Chubb, I'm glad to see him back. I hope he's just back and fully healthy for the rest of the season. We could use some of that, kind of like. And we'll talk about CMC in a second, but the fantasy world is just better when Nick Chubb is out there and producing.
Mm-hmm.
So we have some major injury updates with players that we know or are highly expected to be out. And I'm going to kind of spin these into questions to each of you. So, Joe, Kyle Shanahan said that Raheem Mostert and Tevin Coleman are going to be out this week. And he also said that Mostert and Debo are going to be expected after the bye week. So let me ask you, are you comfortable starting any running back from the Niners who is healthy? And is Brandon Ayuk suddenly a must start if Debo's out?
It's going to be interesting. I think I'm okay starting McKinnon. It really depends on what else you have out there. Right. But we did see last week that he's able to salvage a week just with a few touches, as long as he can get in the end zone or get some catches. And he kind of did that at the beginning of the year, too, where he was only getting 5-6 touches, but he was turning those into touchdowns and big 20-yard catches. So he does have some viability with Coleman and Mostert both out. Ayuk is a little bit of a sketchy situation. Mullins hasn't looked promising other than at the end of last week, but Richie James Jr. also did come out, and I think
can Ayuk get that Richie James volume? And did you hear that Shanahan was planning like 80% of the offense around Brandon Ayuk before he had to sit out?
Yeah, I did hear that. They were saying, 75% of the pass game was to Ayuk and 25% was the rest of the 25% was to Bourne, and now they got to throw all that out. And it looked like 100% of it went to
Richie James. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I think Richie James is a good player. He's been dynamic. He's kind of shown that in his limited roles. Is Bourne back as well too? And we're also playing the Saints. So I'm starting Jerry Jeudy if he's healthy over.
I think Bourne is still on the COVID-19 list.
Is he? Okay.
I think he's the one who was like the main contact, and then they were, because they, the wide receivers all hang out together, so they were a close contact. Yeah.
Yeah, they're saying that he had a negative test and he may be back tomorrow for practice. So
I don't think that changes much for Brandon Ayuk though if Debo's out.
I mean, it's just, there's a lot of guys, okay, and then you're going against the Saints, so they've got Lattimore, right? Do you want Ayuk, who's probably going to be shadowed by him? Do you want to start him when Richie James just blew up and Kendrick Bourne's back and you have a bad quarterback? I don't know. The Saints defense is really good. Look what they did to Tom Brady. They're kind of getting in a groove right now. So I don't know if he's a must start, but I don't mind flexing him.
Okay. Let's say before this news, or so we're expecting Debo to be out, right? So before this news, let's say you were going to start Christian Kirk before you found this out, and you have Ayuk on your bench. Does this make you put Ayuk in your lineup over Christian Kirk?
Oh man, that's so tough because I'm biased, right? I'm a Niner fan, but Christian Kirk has been absolutely blazing, right? I mean, he's been on fire, and I'm expecting a game between Buffalo and the Cardinals this week to actually be pretty high scoring, maybe even like last week's Seattle game versus Buffalo. So with that being said, I'd probably start Kirk, but I don't blame you if you say, hey, let's get Ayuk in there as well.
Yeah, to me, with the running backs being a question mark, I think that he's the focal point of the offense. And maybe that means the defense is going to shut him down, though, too. That could be another factor here as well. I just wanted to give people some insight into that situation and what we might do there. Okay, Justin, let me go to you. So Justin Jackson is supposedly going to rest this week, and he hasn't practiced all week. Are you going near anyone on that backfield Joshua Kelly is obviously still there, but Tremaine Pope is back to practice, who had a concussion. Are you starting anybody from the Chargers backfield, or are you just leaving it alone with Jackson out?
It's really difficult. No matter what, Kelly's going to be the second guy, maybe third. He's never going to be the number one, so that leaves Balaj or Pope to get the run. I mean, Balaj, no one wants to start Balaj, but if you're in a pinch, he did have a nice game, found the end zone, got 15 carries. I would say even with Pope back, they just might ride him out. So if I'm in a bye week pinch, I need a filler for a running back, and I had to choose one, I would go Balaj. But I'm not happy with it. But I'm not going with Kelly unless the matchup is great. I just need a safe floor.
Yeah.
Get me 8 points. I'll go Kelly. But Balaj would be the one that I would have to touch if I'm looking for somewhat of a good game.
Yeah, I mean, I was going into the season and the first couple of weeks, I was big on Joshua Kelly. I've 100% given up on Joshua Kelly thus far. To give people some perspective, Tremaine Pope, week 8 before he was out with his concussion in week 9, had 10 carries for 67 yards, 7 targets, 5 catches for 28 yards, which is pretty damn good. But where did he even come from? I personally didn't even hear about him. I've never heard his name until week 8, which is
he came out of nowhere and just got run over Kelly.
Yes.
Even when Justin Jackson was supposed to start, I wasn't touching that backfield this week. Just too many guys back there until Eckler gets back.
I mean, if we know Justin Jackson's fully healthy and because we've seen him do really well a few weeks here, I would feel good with Justin Jackson. But with him out, I don't feel good about any of the situation.
Yeah.
And real quick, let's talk about CMC real quick. So he got a second opinion. He supposedly has a realistic chance to play next week. There's not much to do this week about this. If you have his backup, you're starting him. But how are you guys treating this season long if you're a CMC owner, or if you have a chance to trade for CMC for the rest of the season? Do you guys think that there's more to this, that he's going to be out for the rest of the season or for multiple weeks where you can't use him for a playoff push? Or are you guys comfortable acquiring him? Joe, how do you feel about this situation?
I mean, if you're trying to push for the playoffs and you can get him and Mike Davis together for cheap, you do it, right? But if they're asking for, a big haul where it's going to really affect your chances of making the playoffs, obviously you can't. Now, if you're in a position where you're 7-2, you're 6-3, the playoffs are, in graphs, you're already there pretty much. You're in second place, first place, third place. Damn right, you go out and help that fantasy manager who's sitting there with CMC, who might be looking on the outside in, trying to, make that playoff push. I have him in the league, and I'm fairly confident that we'll see more of him this year. He just seems like one of those guys, kind of like you talked about it a few weeks ago with George Kittle. He just wants to play.
If he's healthy, he's gonna play. He won't let them sit him.
Yeah, it just doesn't matter that they're out of it or whatever. It wouldn't matter because they're still going to play him, just as we saw last year with them. So, and then top that off with, they had a really competitive game with the Chiefs, and they could have won that game. And so I realized that they are in a really tough division, and they are 3-6. But a team like that with a new head coach, I think they're going to bring him back and I don't think they're tanking necessarily. I think they're not the Jets. They're going to bring him back, and he's going to have a good rest of the season. You just may have to wait 2 weeks to get there.
Yeah, man, I think it's tough. I think if you're if you made it this far and you're still in the playoff, right now, as far as the standings go, you're in the playoffs and you have McCaffrey on your bench, just hold on to him. But if you're trying to make the playoffs, you need that push and you still have him, maybe consider trading him to get some help right now, because I think he could be out during these weeks where you're trying to make the playoffs, but he's going to come back during the fantasy playoffs, or if not a week or two before then, but it might be too late. So it just depends where you are in your standings and in your league. All right, so let's just jump into these game previews. We want to knock this out in about 30 minutes or so. So let's go in order here. And we got the Eagles and Giants. And I don't know if you guys noticed this, but most of the time there's a ton of games in the morning and then like 3 games in the afternoon and 1 at night. I believe there's 5 games in the morning, 6 games in the afternoon.
Whoa.
And then 1 game at night, which I actually like because I don't wake up too early due to my work schedule. So I usually am like turning on my TV, getting ready for the afternoon game. So that's exciting. But starting off with the morning games, we have Eagles and Giants. Now, so a lot of these players are actually, other than maybe Miles Sanders, I don't think there's anybody on these rosters that are, or I guess Fulgham is set it and forget it at this point. So I guess Miles Sanders, who we're expecting back, and Fulgham are set it and forget it. But let me ask you guys, and it's hard to tell because it always comes down to who else is on your roster or whatnot. But Justin, we've talked about this guy a lot. How are you feeling about Jalen Reagor this week? Is he somebody you're just holding on your bench to see how he does, or are you starting him in your flex?
It depends, like he's gonna get run. That I have a feeling that they're fighting to get that first seed and make the playoffs. They're gonna turn it on. They're starting to get a little bit more healthy. And Reagor, like we spoke about, Reagor and Fulgham are going to be that 1-2. I feel, to put in perspective, I feel more comfortable starting Reagor than I would Ayuk or maybe even Justin Jefferson versus the Bears. That's how I feel about him on that team. So if you need a bye week fill, maybe Tyreek Hill's on a bye for you, I would start him. I wouldn't worry about it because you hope they just click, and why not this week?
Awesome. Joe, what would you say is your one takeaway from this game going into Sunday?
I'm ready to see Miles Sanders back, man. I'm ready to see him back. He's had some damn good games. And as far as Jalen, I heard Alshon's back. I don't know if you guys have heard that too. I'm not saying it's going to be huge. Everything I've seen has said Alshon is the wide receiver 3 there behind Fulgham and Jalen. But you just never know. Veteran guy, quarterback's been struggling this year. You don't know. He hasn't played since week 13 of last season, but we will see what ends up happening there.
I know. He's not going to do anything. I know. It's Alshon, dude. It's time to move on. They have new blood that they're not going to waste time anymore.
Yeah, I mean, they're paying him $15 million a year, so I think they're gonna try to use him this year. Whether that's in a limited role where we see him, kind of in that Antonio Brown to start, what we just saw, where it's 3 or 4 targets, or whether he just doesn't show up at all, like Justin said, I don't know. But I have a feeling he will be on the field, at least in 3 wide receiver set,
and at least as a decoy, if anything. I mean, and then. It just being on the field can lead to production. So we'll see. I am a little worried about Fulgham, to be honest, because we've seen him be a baller for like the last 6 weeks or so, right? But he's been the only guy they've had. That has to do with it, right? So we have Goddard back. I know Goddard was back last week, but he was just coming back, getting back into the feel of things. We have Goddard back. We have Reagor back. We're going to have Jeffrey back. Do you guys think Fulgham falls out of this solid wide receiver 2 production he's been putting up?
I think it's not so much for the reasons you mentioned. There's 2 factors that I think. It's some is just the feeling where, like AJ Brown, he's been balling out. A bad week's going to come.
Yeah.
But if you combine his timely regression, also matching up against Bradbury on New York's cornerback, he's a stud. So he shuts down people, to be honest. I think a mixture of that. He might have a down game, but I'd still want to play him against that Giants team being a division. They want to ball out. They need a win. So it's a mixture. But that also makes me like Reagor a little bit more. So it's an interesting dynamic they have over there in Philly land.
Yeah, and I called Fulgham a wide receiver 2, but since his blow-up, he's actually been a wide receiver 1. But I feel like as far as value, people treat him like a wide receiver 2. Like you can't get wide receiver 1 value in a trade for involving him, but I think people view him as a wide receiver 2, I would say. Cool. Well, let's go on to to Jaguars and Packers, I mean, we have the usual suspects here. You're starting James Robinson. I mean, you're starting Chark for better or worse. You're starting Devontae Adams. You're starting Aaron Jones. One thing for me, and I'll go to you, Joe. If you have Jamal Williams, do you think he's simply a handcuff bench player, or do you think he's a starter in fantasy, even with Jones in?
With a fully healthy Aaron Jones, I'm not starting Jamal Williams. I can make the case that, listen, if you're really having some bye week blues and some injury concerns, that hell, even with Aaron Jones starting, we've seen weeks where Jamal Williams can still be effective. So if you really need to get somebody in there, you can do worse than him. I think he's got a decent floor. Like if I'm deciding, like, let's say I have Aaron Jones and Williams, and then I also have the Chargers backfield. So if I'm just starting between, throwing in a Balaj or throwing in Williams, I'm throwing in Williams. But on the reverse side of that coin, if I have Jerick McKinnon, I'm probably going to play him over Jamal Williams. So I think it depends on what you're looking at, what your team looks like, what kind of bye week blues you're having, injury woes, COVID-19. It's been that kind of a year. So, you can throw him in. But I think Aaron Jones now is about 3-4 weeks removed from that injury. He came back and played last week.
Oh, he's fine. Yeah, dude, he came out blazing last time he played.
Yeah, so I think you're going to see some big production from him. And, you never know, though, because, look, they're playing against Jacksonville. That game could get ugly early like we saw against the Niners. And if that happens, then hell, you might want to throw him in there, because if garbage time, they may choose not to run Aaron Jones just to save his legs.
Yeah, for sure. I think, I've seen some rosters that are hurting in fantasy leagues. So I think people who, like I might be in a situation, if Nick Chubb doesn't come back, I might have to start Zach Moss, right? Mm-hmm. I might want to start Jamal Williams. I don't have Jamal Williams in that league, but if I did, I might feel better starting him than Zach Moss, for example, in my second running back spot. But if Chubb does come back, obviously I'm starting Chubb.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, Justin, let me ask you two questions. So Allen Lazard might be coming back. Do you think people should be rostering him right now? And then on the Jaguar side, is there any Jaguar you're starting other than James Robinson or DJ Chark?
Lazard should definitely be rostered. Hopefully your league is good enough where they accounted for some IR slots where you could have been holding him, and if not, go and hold him. Basically, Lazard to me is a wide receiver 2 in a high octane offense, and I want that on my team. When he played the first 3 weeks, he had 2 great weeks, 1 decent week. Definitely hold him. I personally picked him up, waiting for it. If for example, I hate to bring this guy up, we keep talking about him, Cole Beasley. I'd rather start a Lazard than a Beasley, just that type of flex play for me. So definitely hold him. As far as the other wide receivers, I don't want to really start anybody over there. I know the backup QB had a whatever game. Shark had a nice game, but Cole, Conley, Laviscus, I don't know who's going to get the catch. I don't know who's going to get the touchdown. I'd rather pivot elsewhere. There's other wide receiver flex options that I can go to. They're not very favorable for me. I'd rather step away.
Yeah, I agree. And Laviska has a hamstring issue, and he might not play. But I still think no matter what, Chark is in lineups. So you don't worry about him there. But keep an eye out for Keelan Cole. Don't start him, but I would keep an eye out for him for sure. Yeah. Joe, are we missing anybody on the Jaguars, or not much going on?
No, I mean, Chark actually sounds like he's been complaining about Gardner Minshew kind of. From what I've seen in the media, complaining about getting targets, and look at what happens. Minshew goes out, this backup comes in, nobody really expecting much, and then the backup just peppers him. And that's kind of what we see, dude. When we see backups come in, they tend to rely on those studs a little bit more than somebody like Minshew might. So if he's getting, I don't know, what did he have? 12
targets, 146 yards and a touchdown. Oh my goodness.
Beautiful game.
I mean, and before the bye, he had 14 and then 7 targets. So yeah, one of those was a really bad game because he didn't do anything with those 7 targets. But it's starting to look kind of up for Shark where I thought about buying him in a few leagues this week just to see what happens.
Yeah, he's definitely. I mean, for me, if he's healthy, I'm starting him in any league I have him in. It's never been a question because if you look at your flexes, is anybody your flex options better than him? Probably not.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Justin, we got the football team going up against the Lions. People are starting McLaurin, people are starting Gibson. So we have J.D. McKissick coming off his 14 target game from Alex Smith. I think I know the answer to this, Justin, but is he in lineups this week?
Definitely favorable matchup. Alex Smith, we spoke about if you listen to the last podcast. This is just a nice matchup in general. PPR favorable. I love McKissick. And the beautiful part about this, and I hope to see it, he hasn't found the end zone once. So all the nice games he's had has been strictly catch and yards. So if you combine that with an end zone, you just turned a lottery pick that gives you a chance to put you over the top. So McKissick is in my lineup. You're missing Zeke, you're missing maybe Bell and Sen and whatnot. So McKissick is a perfectly fine fill-in for those bye weeks.
Yeah, he's definitely a bye week fill-in. If most people have their full roster available, maybe not. But for example, I have Zeke on a bye week, sliding McKissick in there just because. I mean, what other choice do I have? They have a great match. Him and Gibson have a great matchup, even though McKissick's kind of more of a wide receiver. Joe, let's go to the Detroit side. I mean, I think, Swift is an interesting player because he's been putting up solid, like decent games, meeting his projections basically, but not blowing up other than that one blow up game. Is Swift set it and forget it for you or no?
I'm not sure that he set it and forget it, but during this time of the season where I have guys like Mostert, Ridley, CMC, Galladay, Eckler that I'm waiting to get back. Yeah, he's been set it and forget it, man. I mean, he doesn't necessarily really disappoint, and seems like he's gaining more share of that offense as each week goes by. And I hate to say that because every time I start to get a little bit more confident in it, then he has a little bit less. But I mean, look at kind of what he's done since the bye week. He's had, 14 carries, 4 targets, and that was that blow-up game that you talk about. But then again, the week after that, he has 9 carries, 5 targets, 6 carries, 4 targets, and then again, last week, 13 and 5. So they're giving him the opportunity to have 15-plus touches every game. And typically, that's going to lead to something, right? If I'm getting a running back, it's kind of like what you guys just talked about McKissick on having, being more of a wide receiver where he's catching 5, 6, 7 balls a week and he's turning that into a decent game. Well, Swift kind of has that floor also because he's also catching 4, 5, or 6 balls every game. So if we can start to see more of him on, second and third down, maybe, even some goal line work where he may even be a pass catching option. He has the potential. I think we've all seen it even from week 1. So I'm excited for him. I think not set it and forget it, but I'm starting him over McKissick if Gibson plays.
That's a beautiful thing to say because I was just about to say if I had that choice to make, I'd go McKissick, and I'll tell you why. Not that Swift doesn't get the ball. The Washington football team is actually really stingy against the run. People aren't beating them on the run. They're passing on them. I'm down to book it down if you want to put that on this week.
Yeah, I'll do that because, listen, when Detroit goes against a soft run matchup, I honestly almost don't really like that for Swift because then it leads to more Adrian Peterson time. And I don't want to see that. And if you guys actually watched last week's game, so they played against the Vikings, right? They were down 2 touchdowns at the end of the game. They pulled Swift and they put in Kerryon Johnson, who hadn't had any burn. Kerryon Johnson gets 4 catches or 3 catches for like 30, 40 yards at the end of the game. Garbage, meaningless points. But he ends up getting like 7 points. That should have went to DeAndre Swift if that was a competitive game. So I think McKissick has the higher floor. You throw in McKissick, he's going to get you 10 to 15 points. And I think Justin mentioned it. He has not seen the end zone. And I don't think that's really going to change because they don't look for him down there. When Gibson himself is also a very good pass-catching back. So when they get down to that red zone area, they take out McKissick and they put in Gibson. And if they even get down to the goal line, there's no chance McKissick is getting in the game. They may even put in a guy like, I don't know, Peyton Barber, or whoever else they have running over there, who's a more of a goal line back.
Okay, let's book it down.
I'll book that down.
So I'm adding a book it down tab to our team spreadsheet because they should be in there anyway. And I'll have Gabe add all the old ones in there. But let's say, and the thing that sucks about this, pretty much how we treat it is whenever a book it down comes up, even if you're not the one involved, you have to choose. So I'll choose mine too. So what do we have? We have McKissick and Swift. And again, this is in the full PPR, 1 point per 10 yards receiving. So Justin has McKissick and Joe has Swift. This is freaking tough. This is not an easy choice, and that's where these book it downs come from. Man, this is definitely a tough one. I still can't decide.
I hear you stalling over there, man.
Yeah, I'm thinking about it, but I'm gonna go with McKissick on this one.
Okay,
I'm gonna go with McKissick just because I love the matchup. But most other weeks, I would definitely choose Swift, but. I'm going to go with McKissick on this one. Joe, I want you to think about this. I already saw that you added a name to the spreadsheet for your dark horse. Since we got you on this week, unless you know now your dark horse and your sit for the week, your fool's gold for the week.
I think I put my dark horse in, but I don't think I put my.
Yeah, you put in Sterling Shepard. Is that your official choice for the week?
And how annoying is that I put Sterling Shepard and still decided to bench him for Jonathan Taylor? I like Sterling Shepard this week. Listen, I think that we've kind of seen the Giants' offense get a little bit better. And Golden Tate is not happy over there. So I like Shepard. I mean, he's back. It seems like Ingram, I gave up on him like 1 week too early because now he's doing pretty good too. From rostering him in like 4 leagues to just being done and cutting ties in one night.
In every league, bro, you should have held on to him in at least one league.
I was done with it, dude. I was over it. I kept a couple other guys I like over him, so I'm not too upset. But I mean, it seems like those two have kind of established themselves as the 1-2 over there. And I like Sterling Shepard moving forward. I think he's a solid flex play. I think if he's in the lineup and healthy, he's going to get you 10 to 15 to 20 points on a good game if he scores a touchdown. This week against Philly, I think it's actually going to be a pretty good game. The Giants are surprisingly still battling for the playoffs, and we're almost to mid-November. We're almost to Thanksgiving. And the Giants, who are awful and without their guy Saquon, are actually battling for the playoffs. And when you get those division games, man, you can kind of throw the record out of the window. I don't care if the Giants are 2-7 and the Eagles are 3-4. When you're that bad and you're in that kind of a division, they're always tough games. So I'm expecting the Giants to actually come out and be respectable. And I think that might be one of those games where we see Sterling Shepard get you 7 catches, 60, 70 yards and a touchdown and finish with 15 plus points pretty easily.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, do we have that game on the do they play this week?
It was the first game we went
through. We already talked about them. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, think about a fool's gold if you have one, if you don't have one yet, Joe. Cool. Well, real quick, I think TJ Hawkinson has a toe injury. I don't know if he's going to play or not, but I love TJ Hawkinson this year, man. I think he's a top 3 tight end right now throughout the year. I mean, if you look at his production, he's had like over 10 points in every game, has a lot of touchdowns. Obviously you're starting him if he plays, but I think he's underrated. But other than that, I'm fading the wide receivers in Detroit if Kenny Golladay is out again, to be honest.
Yeah, Marvin Jones actually was somewhat solid last week.
He had a touchdown.
Yeah. So he ended up. I mean, listen, I was without Galladay. I was in a pinch. I put in Marvin Jones. He gets me 14 points. I'm not mad about that, right? But this week against Washington, a much better defense, I wasn't confident starting him. So I agree with you. He's on the bench other than Hawkinson.
Okay, cool. Well, we got about 10 minutes here, so let's kind of rapid fire through these. I'll bring up the matchup, and then you just say like one thing that's a standout to you, whether it's a player who should be started or a player that should be sat for time's sake. So we have Texans at Browns. Justin, what's your one takeaway from this game?
If DJ Stitz start Duke Johnson, the other DJ, with full confidence, no doubt about it.
That's a great point. Joe?
Start both the Browns running backs if they're healthy. I think that maybe is already said enough, but don't get cute. Don't put.
That's a great point.
Yeah. Both of those guys are going to get you 15 plus, especially in that game. So I like them both.
I like that you mentioned that because a lot of fantasy shows that I listen to, they don't talk about this. They talk about Chubb and Hub, Chubb and Hunt as if as every manager only owns them individually, right?
Yeah.
They never talk about what to do if you have both of them. And I think it's a no-brainer. You start both of them every week, no matter what, in my opinion. And at this point, I'm going to say the same thing about the Houston wide receivers. I have both of them in a league, and I have opportunities to bench one of them and start somebody else on my bench, but I'm not even considering that anymore. I'm starting both of them every week. I love, Fuller as my wide receiver 2, Cooks in my flex spot. So if you have both of them, kind of like the running backs in Cleveland, I would start both of those wide receivers in your lineup, unless you have extremely better options.
Yeah.
All right, Buccaneers at Panthers. Justin, what is your one takeaway?
One takeaway right here, I guess I'd have to throw it on the back of Godwin. He should have a better game. That was a awful last showing for the whole team. They're a whatever team. They're going to be down, I think, and Godwin's going to be a part of it. So start Godwin over the other two with confidence.
I'm glad you mentioned Godwin, man, and all three of these wide receivers, it's like you could consider benching them, to be honest. Like I have Godwin in a couple leagues, and I've considered benching him over I consider starting Justin Jefferson over him and starting Brandon Ayuk over him. And I don't think that's crazy right now, to be honest. But I think you just got to hope that Evans is so talented and Brady's going to come out blazing next week, or this week, I should say.
Yeah, I mean, they had real quick. They had a bad game, and he had the best bad game, if that makes sense. I just like when he plays, he's the slot guy. He gets shares from Brady still. I like him more than the other two.
I agree for sure. And I think Brown is going to have a couple blow-up games for the rest of the year. Yep. Joe, what's your takeaway from this game?
So I think it's going to be one of those Tom Brady redemption games. After being absolutely awful and burning fantasy managers all over the league last week.
Dude, trust me, I know. I mean, you literally lost because of it. I have him in a league. I wasn't going to win anyway, but still, that's awful.
Yeah. So, I mean, I dropped him anyways just because in Watson I trust at this point. But I still think that this is one of those games where Brady, he's just too good. And he's just too pissed off about last week. And now they're in a real battle for that first seed with the Saints. So I think he's going to come out and we're going to see some more Antonio Brown. We're going to see Godwin. And, I wouldn't be surprised, Jacob. You said bench all of them. I think that you can think about that right now. But I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing maybe a situation where all three of them become somewhat fantasy viable.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely possible. All I'm saying is, at the beginning of the year, you'd never think you'd even question benching Godwin or Evans, right?
No, yeah.
Never. But now that's a reality, I think.
Yeah.
But it's also could go the way you're saying. And Tom Brady is pissed off after last week. You know he is.
Yeah.
And he doesn't care who he's playing. If he was playing the Jets this week, he was like, I'm going to light up whoever we're playing. That's his plan. He wants to he's been playing long enough to know, like, to change the narrative, and it's so crazy to me. I see this. I talk about 1 week bias with fantasy players, but it's just true in the sports world. Like, oh, now the Saints are the favorite to win the Super Bowl. Now the Bucks are in trouble. Like, sure, maybe those things are true, but it's so funny how people's minds are changed just by one matchup. And I'm talking about like real football analysts, not fantasy football.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah, for me, so I'll go to Gronk real quick. Like, I have Gronk in a couple leagues where I roster 2 tight ends, and I'm like, he was so solid for these past 3 weeks prior to that game. And I think he goes right back to being a pretty solid option because Antonio Brown doesn't affect Gronk, I don't think, that much. So I think the thing is Evans and Gronk are going to be fighting for red zone targets is the only thing. And that they've been doing that for the past 3 or 4 weeks. And Gronk has been the beneficiary of that. So I think Gronk goes right back to where he was doing the 3 weeks prior to that. All right. Chargers at Dolphins. Joe, what is your one takeaway from this one?
God damn, this is going to be a good game.
All right. Here we go. The Dolphins homer here.
Dude, the funny thing is I spent like 30 minutes on the phone with my girl's dad today, this evening.
Well, look, the Dolphins homer and the Justin Herbert fanboy.
Yeah, so listen, so my girl's dad tells me today, oh, I told you 2 weeks ago we were going to beat the Rams and the Cardinals. Now watch, we're going to run the table. We're going to win the next 4 games. And then I'm all, what? I don't know. He's all, dude, I'm telling you, Tua's the man. All right, my takeaway from this game is it's going to be exciting. And you've got 2 damn good rookie quarterbacks that are going to be going head-to-head. And one thing that I think we need to watch out for is, yes, Preston Williams just went to the IR, and I think that sucks for Tua. But Tua could end up being fantasy startable. Like, if you look at Burrow and you look at Herbert is without a doubt fantasy startable. Like, it's a set it and forget it. He's top 5 quarterback in the NFL right now in fantasy terms. Joe Burrow, he's right there on the top 10. You can make an argument for him over any of those other guys. Tua could see himself get into that category. I think we need to see it this week. But if he does that, you have to start considering, is this a guy that maybe I should pick up if I have a struggling quarterback? Or is this a guy I should pick up if, I have a bye week coming up? So I'm going to keep an eye on him and Herbert, of course, because Herbert's he's been killing it. But the Dolphins are actually the number 1 defense, or one of the top defenses in the NFL right now. So I want to see what Herbert does against that.
Well, this is a good fantasy matchup for Tua. And the thing is, I feel like if it's going to happen, if he's going to be somebody that people in 10-team leagues think about starting, it has to happen this week. And if he goes off this week, people are going to be putting in their waiver claims for him, spending fab on him next week. So get ahead on that. If you have an extra roster spot, maybe swoop him up real quick. But I mean, obviously people should be rostering him in 2 quarterback leagues, no question about it. And Justin's over there smirking over there. What do you got for us, Justin?
The takeaway I have from here is based off my lackluster call of a fool's gold in Devontae Parker. He's become kind of QB proof. So start him with confidence.
On top of that, Preston Williams is on the IR.
Yeah, so it helps him. I like Parker. I want to start Parker. If what you're all saying about Tua is true, then it only should mean just as good things for Parker being on the other end of his throws. So start Parker. Don't feel bad about it. I think the blow up that Fitzpatrick could provide is not there, but the floor and decent games are still going to be there for Parker.
I'll say my one takeaway is that my boy Mike Williams is finally going to be a consistent fantasy starter. Joe, how many years have you and I been on Mike Williams? Like, every year we draft him, we love him. He plays hard. He finally has a great quarterback, and I think he's now a guy where you're going to see him produce consistently, and he has a great schedule for the rest of the year, as obviously does Justin Herbert. And I think I might want to talk about this on the Saturday show this week, is eyeing and planning for playoff schedules for fantasy matchups. Because if you look at Justin Herbert's playoff schedule, amazing. Tom Brady's playoff schedule, I know you dropped him, Joe. It is amazing.
That's why
and then,
just, I knew that. I know.
That's why you were holding him?
Well, because if you look at my other quarterbacks,
and Watson's matchups aren't great.
They're not, and that's why I was holding.
But Watson might be matchup proof, though.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the reason I dropped Brady is I needed a spot, and Watson at this point I think is matchup proof. I mean, if you go back and look at some of the tougher matchups that he's had, he's done well. So I think it comes down to let's see what the hell happens, because he's got the Colts and the Bears and New England, and those are 4 tough games that he's going to have to see at the end of the season. So, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, all I'm saying is I've seen Mike Williams still on some waivers. Swoop that man up. Swoop that man up. He had 10 point, and this is in a half-point PPR, but look, 2 weeks back-to-back, 8 targets, 5 catches, 99 yards, a touchdown. 7 targets, 5 catches, 81 yards. I feel like that's going to be, if he gets 7 targets a game, and we've seen whenever he gets more than like 4 or 5 targets, he has damn good games. So, yeah, I think you should be starting him this week in your flex, and definitely hold on to him for the rest of the season.
Hey, I don't want to get ahead of myself, and I know that we have a lot to talk about, but Mike Williams kind of reminds me of Mike Evans. He was a very high draft pick, and he's always done great with the long ball, and he's never had a quarterback that's really been competent with the long ball until now. And that's kind of what's killing Mike Evans now, is they got rid of the quarterback with the long ball, and Mike Evans has had to repatent his game, and he's good enough to do that. But it's exciting to see, like you said, Mike Williams, when he gets those 5 catches, he blows up and he has a big game just off 5 catches, like a Galladay or like a Mike Evans.
And Mike Williams is still young, so if he's playing with Herbert for the next, 5-6 years, that's going to be a brilliant combination there. Okay, so for the rest of these, I'm going to just assign one matchup to one person, and you'll just give your evaluation of that game. Justin, let's go to Broncos and Raiders. How are you feeling about the fantasy players on this game?
I like starting Waller. I like starting Jacobs. I'm hesitant on Carr just because the Denver defense is pretty good. Broncos, I'm not really sure who to start. If you need a flex, Judy takes the highest priority over Tim Patrick and Hamler. But other than that, I'm not too excited. I think Fant is healthy, so he might be a nice start. But the Raiders wide receivers is a mess aside from Aguilar, which is the only start I see there.
And I will say, like, if you have a strong point to make, Joe or Justin, on one of these that I don't give to you guys, go ahead. Just want to blaze through these real quick, though. Joe, I'll throw Bills at Cardinals to you. And specifically, I want you to say, what do people do if Edmonds and Drake are playing this week?
Shit, dude, if you might have to start both, right? So if you run into that situation like we've been talking about, where you're debating between starting, 2 of those guys, or Jamal Williams or McKinnon, you may get more value starting both of those just because you don't know which one's going to blow up, right?
I agree.
Yeah, we don't know if Drake is going to get cut. So I would say if you have the luxury of benching both of them, do it. And if you don't, and you need 2 guys, maybe consider starting both, because if Edmonds goes off for 20 but Drake gets you 5, or vice versa, you're not as hurt as if you just play the guy that only gets you 5. So
I'm going to step in and say that's absolutely wrong. And as a Drake Edmonds owner, I've been watching it very closely, and I'm going to tell you, if Drake plays, you start Edmonds. If Drake doesn't play, you still have to start Edmonds, but that might actually be worse, because the game script that the coach runs up for the starting running back is ugly. It's see-through, and the pass catch work that Edmonds will get on the third downs is more beneficial than anything that Drake is going to get. That's the way it's just been.
It's crazy. They get like 20 carries and they don't do anything with it.
Just start the guy that gets the least attention, which is going to be Edmonds in both scenarios, probably.
Yeah, we'll see. But that's fantasy games, dude, where we're going to see 60 points in real life, maybe 70. And that's you want to get it. I think you want to get as many guys from that game in as you can. That's kind of how I feel about games like that. Yeah.
Good point.
So I literally have this situation in a league. I have Edmonds and Drake, and I have Swift. So that is a tough call for me, to be honest.
Yeah. That's tough. Those are your three guys that you
for my flex.
And you have to start two of them.
Yeah. Right now, I have Edmonds and Swift in until I hear about a update on Drake. But
yeah,
it is tough, and I don't really have a better option. Like I could start Jamal Williams or Antonio Brown, but I would rather roll with one of these running backs.
Yeah. I wouldn't blame you for starting both, honestly.
Yeah, we'll see, because who knows with Swift. Like, I mean, like you said, he's not set it and forget it. If he was, I wouldn't even think about it.
Yeah.
So we also have 49ers Saints. Joe talked a lot about this matchup. For me, I mean, obviously with the Saints, I mean, suddenly Drew Brees might be a streamable QB. Of course, you're starting Michael Thomas. I wouldn't start any other Saints wide receiver. And of course, we know the running back situation there. But like I said, I think if Debo's out, you fire up Brandon Ayuk in your flex unless you have a way better option.
So Jacob, Judy or Ayuk this week? If Judy's healthy, let's say he comes out, practices in full tomorrow.
Practice is in full, good to go. Hard to not start Jerry Judy after that blow-up game.
Yeah, and he's going against Vegas in the Dome. Yeah. So it should be a pretty high-scoring game, I think, between those two. Divisional game.
I would go Judy, to be honest.
Yeah.
Even it's hard. Niners, we're Niner fans, but
yeah.
So Joe, Seahawks and Rams. Anything to take away that people don't already know?
This is going to be another high-scoring ass game, man. So again, just like I said with the Bills and the Cardinals, get as many guys from this game as you can in. Obviously, we already know you're starting Lockett, you're starting Metcalf, you're starting Kupp, you're starting Woods. I don't know about any of the running backs because I'm hearing that Carson is probably not back. But,
running backs on both sides, too, are questionable.
I don't like the Rams running back situation. I know Henderson has been the guy, but I was looking at it the other day, and he's been the guy getting 9-10 points. So I'm not sure I want to start any of those guys. It's just, we kind of thought we had some clarity with Henderson for a couple of weeks, but that's a pass-first team. And I know that they were running the ball a lot to start the season. It's kind of went away from that and kind of more towards us seeing Woods and Kupp and Everett and those guys step up. So
what if we hear Sunday morning, last minute, that Henderson's out? And let's say Cam Akers is out on waivers. Do you add him to your bench just in case he has a big game?
Yeah, of course. If you have that spot, I mean, look what he did last week: 9 and 35, 1 for 19. He ended up putting up 6.5 points, and that was with Henderson only playing about half the game. So if you run into the situation where you're able to get either of those guys without the other one, I don't look at Malcolm Brown as a huge threat. So if you have a chance to pick up Cam Akers and Henderson looks like he has a little bit of a nagging injury, pick him up. I would do what you do, get one of those things where maybe you're holding somebody else for that early morning game. And this is obviously Yahoo, ESPN, you can't do this, but you're holding somebody early morning game. You find out that Akers is going to be starting and Henderson's out, drop him, pick up Akers,
Yeah.
So
I'm not the only one who does that, but I do it a lot.
I do it too. I do it too. I mean, I did it tonight with Wilkins.
The thing is, the Yahoo allows you to do that, so why not utilize it to your benefit? It's not like it's cheating or anything like that.
No.
All right, Justin, Bengals and Steelers. If you had to put $20 on the Steelers wide receiver who was going to be the most fantasy productive this week, who would you choose?
God, that's one of the hardest questions.
You have to put $20 on it.
I've ever got. I'm going to have to just say Claypool. I think he's been safer all around, and he's going to be the number one going forward from here. I like Juju. Yeah, but Deontay has some blow-up games, but give me Claypool.
Yeah, anything else to take away from this game?
I think it's safe to start Boyd and Higgins. If you're on the fence about Green, that makes sense. But you start your starts and you kind of pivot away from the rest.
Guys, I hate to – I know we're in a roll. One thing to take from this situation, Juju Smith-Schuster, I complained about him more than anybody, right? So he starts out the season pretty decent, starts to fall off. Last 3 games, 14 targets, 8 targets, 7 targets, a touchdown, over 65 yards all 3 games when he had only done that one time this season up until those games. He's suddenly become that wide receiver 2 that we are looking for. Now, will he consistently do that? I don't know. But one thing that we're seeing is as the going gets a little tougher, as their matchups get a little bit tougher, go back and look at the matchups that they had to start the season. Very easy matchups. Giants, Denver, Houston, Philly, Cleveland, not very good teams. They go against Tennessee and Baltimore, the 2 toughest matchups they've had all season. All of a sudden, Juju's there. So I like Claypool. I like Deontay. But I think at the end of the day, Ben Roethlisberger still trusts Juju the most.
Yeah, I feel like at this point, I feel pretty comfortable with Juju in a flex spot or something, or maybe your second wide receiver. He's probably going to be the most consistent. And then every week it's going to be Claypool or Deontay going off. Like they're going to switch off. But I think like, let's say you're drafting today and you have to draft one of these guys. Is it crazy to say you taking Claypool for the high upside?
I think it's pretty close, but I still give the edge to Juju. I just like Claypool abusing these cornerbacks on the Bengals a little bit more.
Yeah.
What if you knew 100% guaranteed Deontay was not going to get injured for the whole season?
Doesn't change anything.
Would it change anything for you guys?
Deontay Johnson, when he's been healthy, man, he gets like 15 targets.
I know, it's crazy.
Ridiculous.
Like he's so injury prone, though.
Yeah.
It's insane.
I mean, if you knew he wasn't going to get injured, he's got the best floor, I think, out of all of them.
Yeah.
Because he's going to go get those 6-7 catches, PPR. He gets you 50 yards. He's got a solid floor.
Ben seems to love him, to be honest. Arguably, these last 2, actually, I was going to say the next matchup is like the least exciting one, but maybe these last 2 are the least exciting ones. But Ravens at Patriots. To me, I've seen Lamar Jackson ranked number 7 on ESPN for quarterbacks this week, and I have him in a league. I'm gonna start him, but I don't feel great about it. Like I don't want to be the guy who starts Joe Burrow over him this week, and then Lamar Jackson goes off for 40, and the one week he goes off, you don't have him in your lineup. So I guess you have to start him this week. Mark Andrews, man, has been extremely disappointing this season, as have most tight ends other than Travis Kelce and a healthy George Kittle. But I guess my number one main takeaway from this is I think Hollywood Brown is droppable. I think he's droppable. I dropped him in a league today, not any leagues that you guys are in, but I dropped him because, all right, here's the reason I dropped him. Giovanni Bernard was on the waivers, and Mixon might not play this week. And I'm like, I'm not leaving Giovanni Bernard out on waivers when he could be an RB1 with Mixon out. And the only guy I could drop, and these are short benches, 1 flex leagues. So I'm like, screw it. I'm dropping Hollywood Brown.
Yeah. I mean, he's had about 3 good games this year out of the, 8 or 7 that he's played, 7 or 8 that he's played. He's had about 3 good games. I mean, listen, I remember you guys kind of talking, Justin specifically loving on him coming into the year, and I just wasn't sold because Lamar Jackson wasn't some Patrick Mahomes last year. We watched him. He got beat by Ryan Tannehill when it really came down to it, and that's why when that NFL, we talked about it a lot in the offseason, when that NFL column came out naming him the number 1 player, I was laughing my ass off that they had the audacity to put him ahead of Mahomes and Wilson.
And Wilson, oh my goodness.
It's ridiculous.
I remember you and I were like, this is ridiculous.
Ridiculous, dude. And while I think from a fantasy perspective, we're going to start to see him turn it up a little bit towards the end of the season, it's Hollywood Brown, even Mark Andrews, not droppable, obviously. I still think that he will get going as well. But I don't think that he's necessarily a start every week. If you have some other guy that you like, if you have a Noah Fant, I'm starting Noah Fant maybe over Mark Andrews moving forward. He hasn't proven enough for me to say, oh, he's a set it and forget it anymore. So,
okay, first of all, You guys are really rude. That is my dark horse of the week in Hollywood Brown. And I'm so
your
happy.
dark horse I'm saying is
I'm so
droppable.
happy that everyone
Look,
is
in
saying,
most leagues he's not, but in the situation I was in, he was.
listen, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You'll start him this week, and if you drop him, you'll be very sad because he's about to have a nice game. He's very underwhelming, and it's mostly because of Jackson, but we hope it turns around. But yeah, it is underwhelming.
Yeah, and as far as New England goes, I think Jacoby Myers is worth a roster ad, but I wouldn't start him this week.
No.
I wouldn't start him this week. All right, we don't need to talk about the Vikings, right? We could just talk about the Bears.
Nothing on the Vikings.
Yeah, sit Dalvin Cook, sit
Yep.
Adam Thielen.
Yep.
No, what do you guys take away from this game? We can close this one out together. I mean, Dalvin Cook is probably the number one fantasy player in the game right now, so there's no question about that guy. And I think everybody usually starts Thielen. What's up with Justin Jefferson? Do you guys think for a while people were putting him in their lineup no matter what? Where do you think he stands now?
It's not so much on him as the Vikings. As you saw, Cook is blowing up, and that means we pass less. It's just the recipe that we do when we win. And Thielen, I looked at his history against the Bears, and he doesn't have great game against the Bears. I think the Vikings win, again, partially a lot has to do with Cook, but I do like Jefferson in this game. Big guy. He kind of played the Allen Robinson role a little bit, get 8 targets, big 15, 25-yard catches for chunks. So I like Jefferson this matchup, but Thielen, I'm tampering my expectations.
Yeah. I mean, obviously you keep Jefferson on your roster, but I think now you're considering starting him instead of for sure starting him every week. Joe, how are you looking at the Bears? I mean, David Montgomery is actually still in concussion protocol, I believe. And I don't see any backup coming in and being fantasy relevant, but I believe his name is it Darnell Mooney or is it the rookie wide receiver in Chicago?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How are you feeling about him? Do you think people should keep him on their roster?
I'm not sure you need to keep him on your roster. He's been getting more and more looks as the season goes on. But Allen Robinson, I think, is still the guy there. And, I mean, the secret is out. Darnell Mooney is going to be a stud, I think, one day. And, he has gotten a couple of good games in a row where he's had those targets. But I don't know, man. I just don't like the Bears.
It's hard
so
to.
Underwhelming. And beyond maybe a waiver wire or bye week throwing in Jimmy Graham or, obviously starting Allen Robinson, I don't really like anybody else on that team. So I don't think that they do enough to get me excited about Mooney. And I'll tell you guys what's up with Justin Jefferson more than what Justin's saying. He doesn't want to lead it on. But ever since I told you guys that Ayuk was better the rest of the season, Justin Jefferson's kind of fallen off. So we'll see. I mean, he had those two big blow-up games.
I'm gonna go back real quick. Do you guys know who the 6th best tight end is in the league right now for points?
It's probably Jimmy Graham.
That's Jimmy Graham, and no one wants to start him. You should be starting him. He is getting end zone looks every single week. Start him, dude. Enough is enough. You want to win, you just start a tight end that produces. He produces. No one believes it, but he does.
I was debating picking him up in the league, and I think let me go look who I ended up picking up. I ended up snatching up Tanyan off the waivers. Somebody just dropped him. Are you starting Graham over Tanyan?
If it was my call, every day, not even a question.
Yeah, I would.
Yeah, I mean Tanyan's got a good matchup. He's going against the 3rd worst, and he's got a pretty soft schedule coming up.
Outside of Kittle and Kelsey, it's just who can find the end zone. I'm taking those targets.
Yeah. Well, I just trust Aaron Rodgers to just luckily find Tanyan for a touchdown more than I do.
Tanyan blow-up games were mostly while Adams was out, right? So
yeah,
been But the Packers are ran, and I guess with tight end, like you imagine those 2 MVS touchdowns went to Tanyan instead of Marcus Valdez-Scantling. Like they easily could have. So if you have that high upside with Aaron Rodgers, that's always a plus. And I don't feel good about starting Jimmy Graham either. But hey, production is production, man. It is what it is. And of course, A-Rob is the one guy in Chicago like you feel great about starting, but he's actually questionable this week. I think if we find out, and we're not going to find out till late Sunday or maybe even Monday, that he's probably going to play. But if he doesn't, then you need a last minute, like let's say you're waiting on A-Rob, and let's say they rule him out Monday. You should hold on to Mooney. If he's out, they have a great matchup against Minnesota, who's given, depending on your league settings, they've given up around the 3rd most fantasy points to wide receivers. So that's definitely another strategy you want to. It's always great when that Monday questionable player, their backup would be a great option if they sit out, basically.
Yeah.
All right, Joe, did you think of a fool's gold for this week?
No, I don't have one yet. I'll update the tab though. I hate to keep you guys.
We could all go in it. We can just go add it in there, but the book it downs are in there. We'll make sure to get all those in so we can keep track of them.
I guess I do have one. I'll go ahead, and I was debating this one. I wasn't sure if I was able to. I've been hearing Derek Carr is fantasy usable, right? So I'm going to go ahead and put him in my fool's gold. And I think a situation where they go to Denver, good defense, they're going to lean more on Josh Jacobs than they are throwing the ball. And like Justin said, the receivers are not anywhere that we'd want them to be. Waller is solid. But I just don't see – I saw DeMont starting him over somebody, maybe Lamar Jackson or something in one league. I can't remember exactly who it was, but he was starting him over somebody. He's not in my top 10 this week.
Oh, he might – so DeMont's playing him against me in beers, but I don't think he has another quarterback though.
Maybe not. But I think there's some other options on the waivers.
There's streamers on the waiver that are crazy good.
Yeah, so there's Drew Brees. Ben Roethlisberger looks like he's going to be back, and I know he hasn't been amazing, but he's had some really good weeks. Jared Goff against Seattle. These are all guys that I like more than Tua. Yeah. Tua is the guy. I'm not kidding. Tua's the guy.
No, I know. I've considered it. I still have to pick up a quarterback in that league. I might just rock no quarterback and still win. We'll see how it goes. All right, that's gonna do it for this episode of the First Round Fantasy Podcast. We're gonna figure out a way to keep these shorter. We're aiming for an hour, and we did. It's not gonna be actually an hour and 27 minutes. We're gonna keep it. It'll be shorter than that once I edit it and everything. But maybe we should spend less time on the Thursday game because we talked a lot about Jonathan Taylor and our disappointment in him. But thank you all for watching this video. I'm your host, Jacob Barley. That is Justin and Joe. We will see you all. We'll put up a fantasy strategy episode this Saturday, and then we'll see you next week on Tuesday. Have a good luck this week. We'll see you then.
Peace.